Uzi, how are you?
Doing well. Excited to see 10-10 was confirmed.
Good. We have a lot to talk about today. Omar, what did you think of the debate? Let's start with the.
Yeah, it was a shit show. Um, Two pretty bad candidates, in my opinion, and everyone seems to agree that Kamala won. Um, Trump was talking about, for example, his rally crowd sizes, Haitian immigrants allegedly eating cats and dogs, which it's unclear actually happened. And you know, generally we didn't learn much, but people seem to believe that Harris had a stronger performance. We're seeing a move towards Harris on the betting markets, whereas it was kind of 50-50. Now it's leaning a little more in her direction. Trump has said that he doesn't really want, he may not want to do a second debate. Even the moderators were kind of, I think, debating Trump a little bit, correcting him when he made certain statements, such as, you know, the cats and dogs and people killing babies after they're born, things like that. So, it's like, is this even a presidential debate we're having here? And I think Harris is a pretty weak candidate herself, but it's a little bit like the first debate where you had Biden and Trump. And Trump won the debate only standing next to a soggy noodle, which was Biden. And Biden was so bad that people didn't even pay attention to the fact that Trump wasn't making any sense because at least he was forming complete sentences, whereas Biden seemed to struggle to do that. And I think he may have kind of gotten overconfident after that first debate performance that knocked Biden out. And Harris came in. The Democratic team prepared her very well. And I mean, even Elon admitting, Elon obviously has been very vocal about his support of Trump. Even Elon admitting that it looks like Harris won the debate last night. So good news for the Democrats. It's still, I think, a toss up in terms of who actually wins. We're less than 60 days away from the election. But it really is still a toss up. And we'll have to see how it all unfolds.
Thank you for that summary. Alexander, what did you think of the debate?
Me commenting on American politics? Pass.
I saw your couple of replies, but yeah, it was wild actually. Uzi, what did you think of the debate? And then Dallas.
It's pretty frustrating for the most part. The the moderators didn't make it flow in a way where there was truth seeking. It was a lot of personal attacks. I found Kamala to appeal to pathos a lot, and that wasn't a substantive discussion where there's any like policy that is exciting. Um, Trump messed up a couple times. I mean, I knew he was going to lose when it came to abortion. I think he struggled with healthcare. He said I have some concepts. So, you know, part of the problem is that when you don't trust the moderators or you find them biased, then you perceive, Trump's losing as corrupted by the moderators, and then you just downplay the Harris victory. One thing I want to correct though is Omar said that Harris is up according to Polymarket. Before the debate, Trump was up. During the debate and after, it was tied, and now Trump's up by 2% on Polymarket.
Yeah, things are very volatile. I mean, these betting markets, they are very, very volatile. And I think a lot of times what people do is they look at what other people think and then start placing bets that way. So especially after events like this, you're going to see a lot of volatility back and forth. I mean, we're seeing the same thing on macroeconomic data too. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But Dallas, what did you think of the debate last night?
Yeah, I mean, I think I find myself like a lot of people frustrated more than anything. I mean, um, ABC showed that they're not capable of putting on a fair debate, and I know that's going to be dismissed as, oh well, just because you're voting for Trump, and that is true. I am voting for him, to be clear, but I didn't find it to be fair at all. I felt the questions were skewed to pinpoint him out on almost every question that came out. I felt like it wasn't fair that they only fact checked him. And then a lot of the things she was saying were being live, fact checked or proved on X during the debate, which thank God for X, as we all know. The truth is out there for sure. But I mean, for example, like the point he was trying to make about post-birth abortions, unfortunately, that is a real thing. I mean, there's the governor of Virginia talking about it on a radio show, bragging kind of in a way about how we keep the baby comfortable and then the mother makes a decision. Like, that's a real thing. That's what he was referencing. So a lot of the things that the news outlets jumped on and said, look how crazy this guy is. Look what he's talking about. I mean, they were real, So I hate that the news narrative immediately following the debate was, look how crazy this guy is. And to be critical of him, he sounded a little unhinged, and she got under his skin. And that's what people will take away from this debate. Is it material in the election for the results? I tend to think not. I think it blips the poly market betting odds briefly for the day of the debate, and then kind of like stocks, it's a up and down day, and then long term, that one day really doesn't matter.
Okay. Now you said Virginia governor. Is that West Virginia or Virginia? And also, is it the current or former governor?
So, former 2019, his name was Ralph Northam. So there's a video circulating around. You can actually watch it for yourself. I would call the video chilling. I mean, it's very real. It's been proven to be real multiple times. And furthermore, it ties to Harris in a way because her VP had a whole debacle about this as well, where he had passed a law to where the state he was over was allowing this same practice to go on. So it's, the abortion thing, no one's ever going to convince you to change your mind on, obviously, for anybody. But I think most people can agree that that's terrifying, that that's even a possibility in this country.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the audience? If you'd like to share your views on last night's debate, please request to speak. Omar, not much from Tesla perspective, right? Not much from my takeaways from the debate as they relate to Tesla or EVs in general, not from this debate. But let's go to Uzi
Well,
first.
there was
and then,
one comment he made where he
yeah.
said,
We'll get to that in a second. Let's go to Bull 2035, Uzi, then Omar.
Hey, just to be clear on the abortion issue, the clip that goes around social media has been edited. It actually involves when there's a non-viable fetus. So just make sure you look up the truth on that. It was Ralph Northam, but actually watch the whole video, not the clip on social media. It's been fact-checked and proven inaccurate.
Thank you, Uzi.
At one point in the debate, the monitor asked Kamala, the monitor explained that Kamala's position on climate change was that it was an existential threat to society. But then, I don't know, earlier before, she talked about how she would not ban fracking. So I'm quite confused on her views on the environment.
Dallas, do you want to address what Bull 2035 said?
Yeah, I mean, editing would imply that there was a splice cut in the clip. And I don't want to go back and forth and turn this into a political debate, but there's no splice cut in the footage that I saw. I mean, sure, I guess calling a clip of a full video would be considered editing to some, but I mean, the clip is there. You can go watch exactly what he says. He does use the word non-viable as an option for the procedure that they did, but I don't think it's limited to just non-viable. I think there was some choice there made by the mother. So again, abortion debates could go on for years. There's no point in arguing that, but that clip's real. Just go watch it for yourself.
Okay. Obviously this is a very controversial topic. However, that doesn't mean we can't discuss it. And just because something has been going on for decades doesn't mean we can't or we shouldn't discuss it. And also, like, this specific discussion right here is not real political. It's just, did he say non-viable? Did he not say non-viable? That's more of a factual thing. So I'll review that. I'm kind of curious, actually. All right, let's switch to Omar. Any takeaways as they relate to Tesla from last night's debate? Omar,
What was the question?
any takeaways from last night's debate as they relate to Tesla?
Well, there
Okay.
there was what.
Okay, can you guys hear Omar?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one part where he said, "I'm a big fan of solar, but these panels they're taking up the whole desert." And I'm a big fan of solar, but the whole desert's being taken up. It's a big problem. That was about it as it relates to Tesla.
Yeah. Yeah, not much of a policy discussion around EVs or solar. They were very much focused on fracking, I guess partly because the debate was held in Pennsylvania. And they both agreed that the country needs all of the above kind of strategy that they need to. Yeah, interesting. And then we have a 50-50 on it. Okay. Uzi, any final words on the debate? Okay. Let's switch to macroeconomic stuff. So this morning we got the CPI report. Right now the markets are pricing I believe 95% or 90% probability of a 25 basis point cut and a very little probability for a 50 basis point cut. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that important for long-term investors what the Fed does next week. I personally don't think it's going to change the end result anyway, whether it's 25 or 50 basis point cut. But after this morning's CPI report, the probability of 25 basis point cut increased, probability of 50 basis point cut decreased, but it's not zero. Omar, any thoughts on the inflation report?
Came in pretty much in line with expectations. I think the market was maybe hoping to see some more progress towards the 2% target to really bolster the case for a 50 basis point cut. Sounds like we're going to be more looking at a 25 basis point cut with the CPI data that we're seeing here, which is fine. Futures markets expect 100 basis points of cuts before the end of the year. So I guess that would be, two 25s and 150 maybe. And, or maybe a 25 followed by a 50. And you're seeing people you're seeing a little bit of a correction in the market in the morning. I think some people were maybe hoping for a 50 basis point cut. But, you have some comments from David Solomon. I think we're making good progress. We're going to have a soft landing. We've made good progress on inflation. And although the labor market's starting to soften a little bit, it's not an apocalyptic scenario yet where, people are losing their jobs and then aggregate demand is decreasing and then more people are losing their jobs and then aggregate demand is falling more. It's not spiraling out of control yet. So overall, I think it's not a bad hand we've been dealt here. You got to give Powell credit for navigating this situation quite well, all things considered.
Uzi, Alexander, Dallas, any comments on the CPI report? Uzi.
Yeah, I thought it was like a basis point above expectations. I think it was I forgot what the technical term was, but on cuts, I've been hearing on CNBC if it's a 50%, a 50 basis point cut, that might be interpreted as bearish because people might assume that the Fed is seeing more concerning the data for the labor market than we'd like to. But then there's also a bullish argument for a 50 basis point cut. So I think what will happen is a 25 basis point cut next meeting.
Okay, what do you mean you're not sure what the technical term was?
Sorry, what'd you say?
What do you mean by you're not sure what the technical term is?
Well, I saw there's like two metrics. Was it just CPI?
Yeah, there's the headline CPI, and then there's the core CPI. The core CPI on a month-to-month basis was slightly higher than expected. Very, very little, slightly higher. And it was primarily due to shelter inflation coming in higher than expected. And also, airline fares came in higher than expected. Airline fares are a very volatile measure. And it was up 3.9% month over month. And the weighting of that item is 7%. So when you do the math, you see 0.03% was due to airline fares, a very volatile month-to-month item. And it was very surprising to people because it should be going down given that oil prices had declined very rapidly in recent weeks. So maybe it hasn't had the time to work through to airline fares just yet. And oil prices are about 80-90%, I think, of a marginal cost of a flight. So that was very surprising. Shelter being higher than expected is frustrating to people because they're watching all these asking rents. Like asking rents, for example, are flat year over year. Home prices are showing early indications of softening. If you look at the median price of a pending contract, that's about 0% year over year. So we're going to see shelter coming down, but people have been saying that for a long time and it just hasn't happened. So people are scratching their heads. So both of those items that drove core inflation today are their early indications that they should be coming down very sharply. So I think that's why that read-through is why the 50 basis point cut probability is not 0%, even after today. So tomorrow we're going to get the CPI report. And once you have the CPI report and the PPI report for a given month, it's pretty much a mathematical calculation to get to the PCE number, which is the preferred measure of inflation for the Fed. So tomorrow's report has heightened importance now after today, because airline fares and shelter inflation is not as heavily weighted in the PPI report as it is in the in the PCE report as it is in the CPI report. So it's going to be interesting tomorrow. Also tomorrow, we're going to get the initial claims for unemployment benefits. And that's an indication, that's a indication of the health of the employment market, obviously. And in recent weeks, initial claims have been declining. So, that's giving more power, more ammunition to folks who are calling for a 25 basis point cut. So we'll see that tomorrow. Right now, the Fed officials are in a quiet period, so they can't say anything. But sometimes Powell has a way of kind of like leaking during this time through journalists, especially Nick Timiraos, who tweeted out this morning after the CPI report and said, the shelter inflation coming in higher than expected makes it very difficult to build consensus around the 50 basis point cut. That was an article in Wall Street Journal. So those are my comments. Those are my takeaways from the inflation number today. More to come tomorrow. All right. Oil. One more thing on macro. Oil prices today hit a 65 handle earlier today. Oil prices hit a 65 handle, which obviously means gas prices should be declining in the near future, and airline fares should be declining as well. So right now they're up to 68 crude oil, but earlier today was 65. So that was due to EIA weekly report showing a surprise increase in the inventories, especially for gasoline and distillate inventories. Okay. Omar, anything else on macro or politics?
Well, I mean, I will just say that obviously, killing a baby after it's born would be murder. So I don't think anybody's doing that. If they are, then they would be tried for murder.
Okay. All right. Did you hear, Omar, that Intel is looking into selling more Mobileye stake?
Yeah, Intel's really struggling.
Yeah. And Mobileye is seeing lower sales, and they revised their profit forecasts. And it sounds like they're going to have third year in a row of losses, if I have my facts correct. So Mobileye is struggling. Intel, its parent, is struggling. They paid what, 14, 15, 16 billion dollars to buy this thing, and it's looking like it's worth nothing.
Yes, it is in fact looking like it'll be worth nothing as more advanced, higher levels of autonomy render lane keeping assist useless. Right? No one needs lane keeping assist when their car can drive itself. So this business is going to go away. And Mobileye has not succeeded in replacing that basic lane keeping assist product that they sell, average selling price of $54 per unit, with their new supervision system, which they say will bring higher levels of driving automation.
All right. So that's that. We have a question for you, Omar, in the replies, or anybody else in the audience who can help with this question. Please request to speak. Nobody asks. We're looking to buy a used Model 3. Can somebody tell me if there's a good way to look up the specs of the vehicle? For instance, battery chemistry or FSD status, etc. Is there something I can enter the VIN into? Sometimes the listings aren't clear or I want to verify. Omar, do you know of any way of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely go ahead and just take the VIN and paste it into a VIN decoder. So there is
That's not
some
gonna.
basic information.
That's not gonna show
Yeah, it's
your
not going to tell you.
FSD.
It's not going. It's not going to tell you FSD, but it'll tell you, for example, where the car was made, what year it was made, what model it is in some cases. So there is some information that you can see in there. In terms of finding out whether it has FSD, you have to check the software tab in the car. There's no way that you can pull the data up from Tesla or anything like that. So you just have to look in the software tab in vehicle controls for FSD. And that should also tell you what model it is, for example, Model 3 long range and that type of thing.
Yeah. And I think dealerships are going to get, over time more educated and start putting these things on the listing itself, whether it has FSD or not. I mean, when I look at a used car listing, used Model 3 listing, I kind of just go through the what they list for assistance features, but it doesn't specifically say whether it has FSD or not. But you can kind of, or you can just call up the dealership. Obviously, if you just go to Tesla.com, they'll tell you whether it has FSD or not. So let's switch to FSD. Dallas just tagged me on a post by Hans. I'll pin it at the top of your screens. Hans says, I really hope we see good progress on the Tesla AI's milestone list before 1010. It seems like we've hit a wall when it comes to rolling out new releases wide to the whole fleet. Almost no 12.x releases have made it to everyone. Well, I don't know about that. I think most of the fleet is on 12.3.6 right now. So that's not correct. But I think he's referring to 12.4, 12.5. So 12.4, 12.5 releases didn't go, wide in the sense that it didn't go to the majority of the fleet. Omar, do you agree with this view?
No. I mean, you just look at what my car was doing yesterday, driving around San Francisco. It is pretty remarkable, not only what the driving model can do, but what Smart Summon can do. I mean, it's pretty hard to even trip Smart Summon up. And, I think it's just kind of the reality that these releases are not going to go wide that rapidly. They need to be validated extensively before they can. With the code, the way the code worked before, when you write a page of code, that code is always going to run the same way, right? So you can pretty much know how it's going to behave because the code hasn't changed. When you train a new model, it's a completely new model. So you don't necessarily know how it's going to behave. You have to watch in the real world and see how it behaves. And especially with something like hands free, there's an extra amount of validation that has to go into something like that. So I believe that Elon said that 12.5.3 with actually Smart Summon is going into wide release this week. I see no reason to doubt that they're going to be on schedule with that based on what I'm seeing in my car. And it'll take some time, but before 1010, everybody's going to be running hands-free FSD, no doubt about it. It's unfortunate that it takes so long, but you just have to be really careful. And, a lot of people who get 12.5 are saying, wow, this is a huge improvement. It's way better. But some people are also saying, hey, this is actually worse for me, right? So maybe in my neighborhood, there's a certain right turn or something that it was doing perfectly before. And now in this latest update, it misses it. So creating a model that is better than the old model without being worse in any way so that users feel a continuous march forward. That's really what they need to do. For your average user, they don't want to see the software going back and forth and having regressions. They just want to see a smooth march forward. So people like me, they can send the latest software and, I'll put up with a little bit of weirdness. Like it is doing like a couple weird things that you sometimes see with new versions. It's a little more unrefined. But the 12.3.6 they have out to the general public is actually continuing to improve and continuing to get better. And when all of their metrics show that it is truly beating 12.3.6 in every corner of the country, then it'll go to wide release. And it looks like they're about ready to go to wide release this week, according to Elon's tweet. So, it's frustrating, but again, you can't mess it up. So it's
Well, let me
just
ask
kind
you
of the way it
something.
has to be.
So so right now we're at a few hundred miles between critical disengagements. If it's taking this long to validate when we're at this stage, is it gonna take? I mean, is it gonna be impossible, like nearly practically impossible, to validate these releases once we get to more than 1,000, 2,000 miles per hour per between critical disengagements?
I mean, I would say we're probably with this latest build already above 1,000 miles between critical disengagements. Like, it just doesn't have safety related disengagements very often.
Okay, but so let's say we're at 1,000 for the sake of this discussion. That's not really the question. The question is, if once we get to like 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000, and we still need to validate new releases, is it going to take 10 times the 2-3 months that's been taken now? Or are we kind of banking on increased usage of the software?
No, I mean, the validation time is not a function of how often there's an intervention. If the software has, let's say 12,000 miles per intervention, then it's actually pretty easy to validate it because it's not making many issues. So you can release it and be pretty confident that, if it's going on average 12,000 miles before a single intervention, there's
Yeah.
not really going to be much to see. At scale, when you have millions of cars that are running it, you'll still see those interventions and be able to focus in on them.
Yeah. Well, we have Machine on the board who is laughing. And if you're on YouTube watching this, you can see Machine with his laughing emojis. Machine, why do you disagree with Omar?
Well, Omar, if you're talking about as an L2 system, then sure, if you don't actually care about intervention rate to see if the software is operating as expected, then you could probably release it in the same timeline as they're doing now. However, Omar wouldn't know this, but I am an expert in algorithms and machine learning. And when you train a model and you have an expected performance of the training, you usually want to make sure that in the test set, aka the real world, the model performs at the same level as it did in training. Part of the reason there is you want to make sure you're not overfit and that you may end up with more spurious edge cases. And so in order to validate that you're performing at the same level, you would need to wait and see that you're getting the same level of performance, EIE, accident rate, intervention rate. And as the genius Yaman brought up, total genius move, that if you 10x the rate of miles per intervention, you're going to have to 10x the amount of data coming in before you have the same level of confidence that the system is operating as the level you want. And how are you going to get 10x the data? You're either going to have to wait 10x as long to get the miles, or you're going to have to 10x the number of people driving per day. And Tesla's obviously trying to increase that, but they're not increasing that 10x. So you're going to have to wait longer. And this is especially true when you get to robotaxi level, where you really have to evaluate the intervention rate. So yeah, it is an issue.
I mean, if you have a software that is, you put it out and you say, okay, I'm seeing this issue pop up in Georgia. So let's say I've got 40 instances of, this stop sign issue in Georgia, 30 instances of this issue in Florida. So now I train a new version of the model. And let's say I only see 15 instances here, 15 instances there. I have less interventions, but I'm still able to pinpoint the issue with scale. And I think the one thing you haven't accounted for is increased usage. As more cars are on the road, as more people are using it, that's also accumulating miles faster. The rate of miles added, for example, with the free trials increasing. So I don't think really this has anything to do with the number of miles they have or how hard it is to validate it. People don't really realize that there's a build internally every day, right? So the ADAS test drivers who work at the service centers around the country, every day they get a new build. And even different testers get different things. Hey, okay, here's a version of the model fine-tuned this way. Here's a version fine-tuned that way. Here's certain features turned on and off. and go ahead and test it. And there's a difference between how fast that end user is seeing an update and what's going on internally, what the early access program members are seeing. It's just not really going to be something where you can just casually wide release to the fleet, a major update like this that changes the driver monitoring system. But that doesn't mean that the software isn't making progress or that it's never going to be released to the fleet.
No hands mode.
Let me try to explain this another way. I assume the reason they're releasing further L2 updates is to improve it. And otherwise, what's the point? And if you want to know if it's improved versus the last version, you need to get estimates of the error rate. And to get estimates of the error rate, you need to have a significant number of miles. And if you're going from 1,000 miles per intervention to 10,000 miles per intervention, and you want to test statistically, did I improve? You're going to have to collect. Let me explain this way from statistics. Let's say I need to get enough batches of thousands of miles in batches to get enough confidence that I'm operating at that level for 1,000 miles. So let's say I need at least 10. I need 10 batches of 1,000 mile samples to say I'm confident that the intervention rate was low enough. So I get 10 batches, 10,000 miles total. Now I move to 10,000 miles per intervention. Now I need 10 batches of 10,000 miles. That's 100,000 miles. So you're gonna have to get 10x the number of miles that you did to get the same level of confidence in your estimate of the performance of the system. It's going to scale linearly with the drop in error rate. So if they're actually improving, it's going to take that much more miles. And you think about that when you get to robotaxi. If you're getting to somewhere where you need one critical intervention per, I don't know, 20,000 miles, 50,000 miles, we're going to have to collect at least 10 batches of that. So you're going to have to get somewhere between 200 and 500,000 miles of test data to kind of get some statistical estimate that the model release is performing at the level that you expect. So that is going to take time, and that is an interesting aspect from Tesla's standpoint about how quickly they can deploy this, any update, and make it work, and confident that that works. And my brain is failing right now.
What's going on with you? You've been kind of out for a while, and now your brain cognitive prowess has declined. I'm guessing because you're not being challenged in your daily life. What's going on?
What happened was I come on X and I realize everyone else is getting stupider. I'm seeing these famed Tesla fanboys such as Alex Tourville totally just losing their minds about
what did you say?
Election fraud.
I got you.
And so, I just think the entire community is falling in line behind the CEO, who's clearly deteriorating. And it's concerning, especially if you're an investor in this company and Kamala Harris ends up winning and you don't know. He already called her a communist, so probably not going to be in good footing for the company standpoint. So yeah, it just seems like everything's on FSD now, because really the commercial consumer segments are going in the shitter. And that's why I'm focused on FSD.
All right, hands mode back on. Sorry, guys. I have a bunch of questions for Machine. So you're worried about consumer segments. Yeah, let's just get your thoughts on. You shared your thoughts on the debate last night. What about today's macro data?
Seems fine. Whatever. I don't care anymore. Inflation's reasonable, you could argue. And you can argue like you did. I think that was smart to point out different aspects of housing as well as the to airline ticket prices. These things cause these month-to-month fluctuations. And I would argue there's certain segments that there's still inflation that ideally we'd want to bring down further. But at the same time, there could be concern in other segments that you're going to end up with get into deflation at some point if we don't start cutting rates. I think it's reasonable to cut rates. I think it makes more sense to cut 25 than 50 to start with. But I don't know. I just think I'm always more conservative with rate adjustments. On the way up, I thought they should have started slowing down the rate hikes earlier. I thought they should have started cutting rates earlier. That doesn't mean now that it's later that I think they should drastically start cutting. But I don't know. I guess I could be convinced that they should cut more significantly because there's more cracks showing. I just don't think I see that any change in that from the CPI report. That you could go talk about all other aspects.
No. Hold on. You clearly haven't looked at it. Have you looked at the CPI report itself?
No, I'm way too busy.
Okay. Yeah. And you probably weren't here in the first half hour either, in the first 20 minutes or so. Were you?
No, I'm sure it was not interesting.
Yeah. Well, you missed a very key point. In today's CPI report, two items that comprise more than 100% of the inflation, core inflation month over month, are shelter and airline fares. Airline fares are very volatile. They jumped 3.9% month over month. And with oil prices plunging in recent weeks, it's likely to come down because 90% of marginal cost of a flight is the oil. And shelter, as we know, is likely to decline as well. Asking rents, for example, are 0.0% year over year. So further, the expectations for September were revised lower after today's CPI report. And the expectation for today's report, year-over-year number, was between the investment banking estimates for 2.5 or 2.6, and it came in at 2.5. Even with this upside surprise on shelter and airline fares. So I think you're missing the point there. As he usually does, faced with data that contradicts his view, machine has left the building. Dallas.
Yeah, so could I go back to the validation miles point?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my question there, and I don't understand the validation process that well, so if someone does, I'd love to know more about it. I agree. I think it's going to be a harder battle in validation as interventions become more and more rare. I guess my initial thought there would be, would you ever open validation up to the the early access program and then kind of restructure or even make a new group where you opt in, you know what you're getting yourself into, that it's going to be a testing model, but then that opens up people who are competent and fluent in FSD to be testing it and grow validation miles exponentially versus doing it all in-house with just Tesla employees.
Well, they're not doing it all in-house, I don't think. They're doing it in stages. There are very many stages of validation. It's not like they're testing with 10, 20 people and all of a sudden going fleet-wide. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Omar, what do you think about that?
I mean, this whole discussion is ridiculous. So the whole premise that, oh, well, they can't release FSD because they don't have enough miles of validation. That's not really how it works at all. I mean, there's 6 million cars driving 12,000 miles a year. These cars are driving literally, hundreds of millions of miles every day. If I want to wait for a safety critical intervention, even if I assume it's only happening at 1,000, that's going to be every 10 seconds. Okay. Even if you 10x then it's still a trivial amount of time. Every few minutes, they're still going to be getting new critical interventions that they can continue to train the system on. And as the system improves, more and more cars will be using it, more and more cars will be on the road. They're actually getting more validation data back as it improves. And you have a software where when at the time when they're releasing it, and okay, maybe if it's 10,000 miles per intervention, 100,000 miles per intervention, maybe then you do have to wait a little bit longer. But at that point, the software is already so good that nobody's really hard pressed for these updates. All you really do is you take a model, you put it in shadow mode, and you see how many interventions there are. The hard part isn't finding the interventions. Right now, it's like a river of interventions coming in. They can't even collect all the data. The hard part of the validation process is actually going and fixing the model and fine tuning it based on all the interventions you are seeing, sending that out, validating it again, finding new issues, trying to fix those issues, and eventually getting something out that is a step forward in every way compared to the previous model.
I mean, I actually share Machine's view on this, and I understand what you're saying. However, there's also the fact that none of the 12.4 or 12.5 releases have gone beyond a few thousand people. So if the fleet is collecting so many miles in every second and everything, why hasn't that happened?
Yeah, it's a wrong diagnosis and really misinformation to say that they're not releasing it because they need more validation data. They have plenty of data. I mean, interventions are still relatively common. It's not hard to find interventions. This is a major update. The car is going driverless. They're taking away the nag and going hands free. They just want to make sure that as they reduce the restrictions, as they allow you to be outside the car and see it operate driverlessly, as they allow you to sit there without your hands on the wheel, that it doesn't make any mistakes that could cause accidents, and that they're running it through at the same time as 1236 all across the country, and really sure that they're not introducing any new issues compared to the old version. This is just part of the process, right? You want to make a new update that's better in every way. And until it's better in every way, people can continue to run 1236. That's the version that's out. And this isn't really a product of where we are, it's just the end to end process. It's very different than when you're writing lines of code. When you're writing lines of code, you know what's going to happen. When you train a model, it's different every time. And they need to have a pretty extensive process of unit tests, but also real world testing to be able to even assess what the performance of the model is. Like, how do you really know that this model is better than the last model? Is it just that the weather is getting a little colder? Is it really better? It's a very difficult thing to do. And this is the first time they're ever doing it, right? So the first 12 update, 12.3, took a year for them to from development start to getting out. Took a year for them to validate it and get it good enough. This one is going to be less than half that time. So they are learning how to do this for the first time. But I think when everybody gets the ASS this week, the results will speak for themselves. You kind of hear these sort of theories happen when people are waiting for the update. They go, oh, well, it's they can't do it because it's hardware 3 or this or that. They start coming up with all these theories for why they don't have it yet. And the reality is just when you have something that's safety critical, you have to be really certain before you send it out wide.
Okay, so you hold the view that this update is just so material. It's such a big change, going from having nags on the steering wheel to just cracking your eyes and removing the nags on the steering wheel. That Tesla just wants to be really, really sure before it goes wide. And in future updates, it's not going to take months like this. It's not going to be delayed by months. This is a uniquely challenging update to send wide. Is that a fair summary?
I mean, I imagine they're also having discussions with NHTSA about it, and that may be part of the holdup. But I mean, from my perspective, they've been sending out a bunch of updates as usual, right? So they've been sending my car dozens of updates. Whether they choose to take it wide or not is really something that's at the discretion of the team. And I don't have the full details about why they made those decisions, but given that they are changing the driver monitoring system, that people aren't going to be touching the wheel, it needs to be much better. There needs to be almost no safety critical interventions. And I'm sure that NHTSA's on their case. NHTSA's maybe even doing their own validations before they give the thumbs up and say, hey, we're not going to, for example, take enforcement action against you for sending out this update wide.
Okay, thank you. Alexander.
Yeah, so if Tesla reaches level 4 or level 5, how would they test new models? Because obviously everybody would not be like a safety driver anymore, like it is now.
So the way that you test models is obviously you have your own test drivers, but then shadow mode is really the key because your own test drivers are never going to find everything. So you take the new model, you send it out. It's now running on 6 million cars. Even cars in Europe, even cars in China, even cars in Asia, obviously given the data restrictions, for example, in China, you have to send the data to a Chinese server. But all of these cars are running the latest FSD version. So 12.5.3 is running secretly. A version of it is on cars all over the world. And as people are driving around, the model predicts what's going to happen. And when what the human does differs from what the model does, then they send that up and show them that there's maybe a potential issue there. And they have different triggers and ways of detecting these issues. So they send the model out to 6 million cars. They find out what the issues are. They try and fix some of the issues. When they think that it's looking good, then they activate it and actually let it control the car.
Yeah, I don't know if you can catch every single thing you need to validate with just shadow mode, because in shadow, when you're using shadow mode to do testing or validation, you can't test the situations where if FSD does differently than the human, what do the other players on the road do? You can't kind of have that. You still need to have human supervised testing. Needs to be part of the validation.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. So, shadow mode can help you find a lot of things. But then as you said, there are some things where, okay, you don't know what would have happened if FSD was in control of the car, which is why they also have their fleet of ADAS testers at the service centers and why they also use the customer fleet. So this is why they have the rolling rollouts, because they know that as good as their ADAS testers do, there's still going to be some scenarios that are very rare that are only going to be seen once they go out to customers. So then they started out with early access testers. Okay, now they're getting even more real world usage data from people who have it on. And then they continue to expand it slowly, adding a little more users, a little more users. This allows them to find the issue on real customer cars, and they can say, okay, stop the rollout, let's fix this issue now that we've discovered it, before continuing to go wider. And because they're limiting the size of the rollout, rolling out wider and wider over time, the surface area of the problem, let's say there is a bad problem, it's less likely to occur because it's on a smaller number of cars. Then they fix the issue, they continue to go wide until it goes across the fleet.
Brandon, then Dallas.
Yeah, Omar, so shadow mode can run obviously in the background without anybody knowing. While they're driving, can it also run and compare against the current version? And if so, how could two models run at the same time on the computer that they currently have in the cars?
Well, there's actually two computers. So only one of them usually is in charge of the main controls of the car. And the other one usually runs like a backup model or, can run a different version of the model. And that's kind of how you do it. So there's FSD computer A, FSD computer B. So FSD computer A might be running the main version of the model, and B is running the new version of the model. And they're actually able to compare the results of both of them and say, okay, which model actually did better? And it's not always the newest model. Sometimes the older model does better. So that process allows them to eventually get something out where the new model's better in every way and doesn't have any steps back.
Dallas.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is why I love this space, because my question earlier was based on my misunderstanding of how validation worked. I didn't know there was a shadow mode fleet wide for validation. I think I always assumed validation was done in house. So that makes complete sense and is the right way about going about things. You brought up a good point, Omar, about in China where the data has to go through a Chinese server. Is there any concern of, intellectual property issues down the road with data collection for FSD within China? Because as we all know, the CCP is completely involved in every business facet of that country.
I mean, it is potentially a concern, but so far they've respected the sovereignty of their data centers. They haven't tried to take any of the data. Yeah, if they wanted to, they absolutely could. They said, "Hey, give us all the data on the servers." Um, no one's going to stop them, but they haven't done that. I think China is, and of course, the data on Chinese servers is only within China. It wouldn't have the US or European data. So it wouldn't be everything you need to train FSD. And, of course, they don't have the GPUs in the training data center there to do it. There's export restrictions on those things. Overall, I think China is such a huge market that it's probably worth the risk. They really need to get FSD supervised in China. If they can do that in Q1 or in the first half of 2025, it's absolutely going to be material. And to these concerns that Machine has raised, when you've got 400,000 users validating, right? Obviously, you've got the whole shadow mode fleet, but then to Yaman's point, that you actually need people using the FSD performing additional levels of validation beyond what shadow mode may be able to detect. We only have 400,000 users today. Of those 400,000 users, maybe only 50% actually use it daily. Maybe 50% have it but don't like it or don't even know it's on their car. So we're talking about 200,000 out of 6 million, or really 1/30th of the fleet, 3% of the fleet. Now, as the miles per intervention gets more rare, you're going to have more users signing up. And that's going to get hopefully a little closer to 2 million for the North American market. As you have in Q1, hopefully launches in additional countries. They've talked about China and Europe as markets they want to expand into. You then have additional users validating in those markets. So although miles per intervention is getting more rare, let's say that miles per intervention increased 30 times. But then if the number of users is also increasing 30 times because miles per intervention is so good, then you're still able to have the same amount of intervention data coming in. So really, especially when you look at their production plans, these next generation vehicles, the robo taxis, their rate of new user additions has a good chance of continuing to grow.
Yeah. I think what people sometimes fail to appreciate is the Tesla's processes are extremely way beyond what we discuss here. Like we're talking orders of magnitude more complex, complicated, elaborate than what we discussed. And I really encourage people to watch um, Tesla's presentations on this. Just go to their channels and rewatch these events. You know, so they use shadow mode, they use simulation, they do in-house testing, and a bunch of things that we probably don't even know about. Ashok has talked about this on the earnings calls as well. So it's a little surprising to me to this day that people don't know this fact. Dallas?
Yeah, I personally see the value in having the supervised data. I think, obviously, like Omar said, that's probably the most valuable data right now because you get the human interaction and response data as well. I mean, I use that to believe that I think down the road, supervised is probably going to be free, if not, $20 a month or something. Just that gets people obsessed with the software and realize that they kind of can't live without it, and then they'll charge, a couple $100 a month for maybe $300 a month for unsupervised. What do you think about that?
Yeah, we talked about pricing before, and Omar has said he's happy with the pricing right now. Yeah, I don't know. I think the software is way more valuable than what is priced today, but they do need
Yeah.
people using it. So
I mean, it's $3 a day. You could always play with pricing or free trials or some free version if you needed more validation data. They always have that tool on the table. Particularly, I think if you felt that you were very close to unsupervised FSD, I would probably just, maybe even make supervised FSD free just to go, if it helps you get over the finish line on validating it, there'll be more than enough money to make on unsupervised if that's really part of the conversation.
Alexander?
Yeah, I only was thinking about what Dallas said. If you offer a less capable version for free that is less safe than the current one, is that really a good idea?
Alexander, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, I don't think they would do that.
Hasseltown, what do you think?
I've lived without FSD for about 16 days now. I will be picking up the Model X Panda at about an hour and a half right now. I've lived without FSD. I can do it. I just don't want to. They could charge me almost whatever, and I'm going to buy it. I purchased it for 8,000, and I think I got off easy. Like when it dropped from 12 to 8,000, I was like, oh yeah. Just like any Netflix subscription or any other subscription, they're gonna give you the price. I remember when Netflix was $4.99. Anybody know what it is now? This is going to happen with FSD as well.
Are you going through withdrawal symptoms? Are you showing any symptoms?
It's almost over, baby. Yes, indeed. It always rains when I have to use the car. And this thing is a death machine on wheels. And if it had FSD, I would feel just a little bit more comfortable. But I fear
Yeah.
driving now.
It is kind of surprising how well it does in heavy rain. When I was testing in Texas, Texas is known for its heavy showers, as you know, and in situations where I couldn't even see what was in front of me, FSD was doing really, really well.
Yeah, my wife, she adapts pretty well. She's a good driver. I'm terrible. I think I'm going to hurt myself or others every time I'm behind the wheel in that thing. And if I'm driving the Tesla, which is just crazy, the acceleration, the torque, it moves when I say move. Now imagine you are in the Nissan, and every time you like get off of all of the controls, the car moves. I haven't had this happen in 4 years. The car moves when I'm not touching anything. That's weird now. And so when you're in the Tesla, when you get off all the controls, the car stops. Doesn't that make more sense?
Yeah. All right, Omar, any final comments on this before we switch to Q3 production deliveries?
I think everyone's going to be blown away by the update this week.
Yeah. All right. Q3 production deliveries. What do you guys think? Let's focus on deliveries for a second. Let's start with Dallas, then Alexander, then Hustletown, then Omar. Q3 deliveries. I think we're close enough to the end that we should probably start putting some numbers on paper here about guesses. Dallas, let's start with you. How many total deliveries will Tesla show in Q3?
I'll be honest, I'm not super well versed on the numbers there, so I probably don't want to give an answer.
Okay, Alexander.
In the beginning of the quarter, I said 470,000. I know that sounds very optimistic, but I'm going to stick with that because I feel optimistic today.
That's what you said. Forgive me for not remembering. I just talked to a lot of people every single day. So that was really your guess at the beginning of the quarter.
Yes.
Wow, that's very impressive. Because I think others are coming to where you are right now. Yeah, that's amazing. Hustletown?
I had it at like 475. I brought it down due to the Europe stuff. So I'm at 465,000.
Okay. Omar?
Yeah, so we've got a easy comp with the year ago quarter. Last year was 435,000 deliveries due to factory upgrades. This year it's looking like we're going to be around 460,000 units. I've seen some estimates as high as 475. I think the all-time record from Q4 2023 would be 484,000. It is, in the cards to have an all-time record. It's, let's say maybe 10-20% chance. I mean, at this point, it's probably uh, either a done deal one way or the other. We're late enough in the quarter, but probably between 460,000 to 475,000 delivery units is what we're going to see. Very strong numbers out of China, lots of promotions in the US, FSD transfer, low interest rate financing, being extended through the quarter. Not so much in Europe, down a little bit year over year, but still beating every other brand, still the number one BEV. So yeah, I think around 460,000 to 470,000 is probably where we're going to land.
Yeah, and Canada also now has subvented rates as well.
Yeah, this is all making a difference. So I'm excited to be able to say, I think with confidence we'll be able to say, hey, this is a record Q3. We've got this percent growth year over year rather than this percent down year over year. So Bears won't be able to hold that one on us this quarter. They'll have to think of something else. And I think we've got
they'll say margins, right? Because these subvented loan rates are costing thousands of dollars per car. All right, so I mean, it looks like Dallas didn't give a guess. Alexander, Hustletown, and Omar are within this 460 to 470 range. Omar thinks that there's a small chance that this could be a record quarter. Interesting. Driven primarily by subvented loan rates. So the question is, what will the margins look like later on? Some people are concerned about Q4 deliveries without naming names. Some people think they could still be weaker. On the other hand, James Cat James Cat is very positive about Q3. He actually thinks that it's going to be more than 475,000. That would be a shocker.
Well,
That
I
would be
hope
very
he's right.
impressive.
You know,
Yeah,
he does do his work. He's done a lot more work looking into this than me. I tend to not care about delivery numbers as much, but yeah, I hope he's right.
yeah, he's a very analytical kind of guy, very diligent. Although he's not very positive on FSD. I know you guys disagree on FSD, right?
Well, I mean, that's a completely, different subject. People who are great at analyzing earnings and deliveries, that doesn't necessarily translate into AI, but everybody has their areas where they have strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, what do you think about the margin impact of how Tesla's driving sales for Q3?
A lot of different moving pieces here. There's the subvented loan rates. There's also the ramp up of various products that they're doing. There's the 4680 ramp up. Cybertruck still won't be profitable until Q4. So we could very well see further margin contraction sequentially.
Yeah. Now, on the positive side, there is the fact that battery costs have been declining quarter over quarter. I mean, Q3 they should be lower than Q2. Lithium prices are down. Other metal prices are down as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting what happens to margins quarter over quarter. But hey, maybe they'll announce something on 1010 that makes all of this kind of, you know, immaterial. Maybe they'll put an Optimus that does something that we don't expect, or the market doesn't expect. That indicates that Optimus project is going well, development is going well. But on the other hand, Elon already said he doesn't expect, or he expects 1 million per year Optimus by 2030. So even if Tesla puts up some, let's say, shows Optimus that is way beyond what we imagined on 1010, if the production is going to get to 1 million a year for 5-6 years, it's not going to be material to financials. Omar, what do you think?
Yeah, it'll take a while before it is material. I mean, that's kind of what Tesla is really good at. In a very short term market, they look beyond next quarter and the quarter after that to 5 years out or 10 years out and what could be a big market. And they've done very well with that, but it often makes them, you know, makes people look at these things and go, okay, they're spending a lot of time talking about something that won't be material for quite some time.
Okay. So if Optimus being material to financials is 5-6+ years out, and if nationwide adoption of robotaxis, so mass adoption of Tesla robotaxis is also several years out, and margins are looking low quarter over quarter in the near term, rates are still high, now what should Tesla investors look forward to?
Well, I think on Optimus, they are using them in the factories. Obviously, not in a material way, but over the coming years, it's not going to be a 0 to 1. I think you're going to see Optimus continue to ramp up in materiality, starting with a reduction in costs at the factory over time and really proving out the design. The thing that investors should really focus on right now is the vehicle lineup and FSD supervised. So with FSD supervised, they've got a really differentiated product. And if they can launch that in Europe and China, the ability to have your car take you places hands free without any intervention, as they're now doing, it's a game changing product. It's like when your cell phone got access to the internet, or your radio became a TV, and you can now see pictures instead of just hear the radio. It's that big of a game changer. So we're really going to want to bring this product to the masses, and consumers are going to be adopting this, whether it's from Tesla or from some other company that has similar features. Hands-free supervised ADAS is going to become a thing because it's just going to be available to launch faster and is already very useful. So FSD supervised plus, really take a look at the vehicle lineup. What we saw with Tesla is that in 2019, they unveiled the Cybertruck. In 2020, they launched the Model Y. Tesla made a decision to essentially stop all new vehicle programs during the pandemic. Everything was put on pause because supply chains were so disrupted that they just had to put everything they could into ramping production of the Model Y. And that was a great decision for the company. Model Y ended up becoming the best selling vehicle in the world. First time an EV's ever done that. But now we're dealing with the hangover of those decisions. 5 years since a vehicle unveil, people are starting to say, okay, well, there's all these new vehicles. We're still seeing the same sexy plus Cybertruck from Tesla. And there's other segments of the market that haven't been addressed. So on 1010, we're going to see an unveil. We know that they're going to have a new Model Y following up on the new Model 3 in 2025. I think that's going to be huge. They've talked about new, more affordable models starting production in the first half of 2025. That's a big mystery. And the Cybercab, that's a new model, kind of unclear when we're actually going to see it on the road or if it's even going to be sold. But the Cybertruck ramp up, the new Model Y, new Model 3, and these new vehicle models are going to start. And, if you've seen some of Tesla's new products, they're incredible. So I think these are really going to be big growth drivers. And when you take
Okay.
that combined with their ability to launch FSD supervised in global markets, there's huge growth opportunities in markets like China, the Americas, and even Europe.
Okay. But let's focus on FSD supervised, and let me go to Alexander first. Alexander?
Yeah, if you have a general automation solution like the Optimus working in your factory, there will not be as a big need for a workforce. That will impact the bottom line for Tesla.
Sorry, can you say that again?
So if you have a general automation solution like Optimus, and you make them work in your factory, obviously you don't have to pay Optimus salary, right? So you can increase production without increasing workforce.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, people have said that for years, but the thing is, the labor cost per car is very little. We're talking a few $100. Okay. And on top of that, your first few thousand Optimus is going to cost you millions of dollars to produce per Optimus. So you're not going to see any sort of cost side benefits from Optimus for many years out. So I don't think that's a good reasonable argument. And on FSD supervised that Omar mentioned, let's say, for example, look, right now you have 6 million cars. Let's say in a year or two, you have 10 million cars. And you have, let's say, you rolled out to China. Europe, I think, is going to take a while, but let's say in Europe, China plus US plus Canada, FSD supervised is available, and your take rate is so good that your take rate is 50%. Okay. So at that point, you got to, like, let's say 4 million cars paying you $100 a month. You're looking at $5 billion of revenue. And so most of that is going to go to bottom line. So even if, let's say, China rolls it out and you have 50% take rate across the fleet, not just new cars, with those rosy assumptions, you're looking at a few $1 billion per annualized profit from FSD supervised. Yeah. I don't know. He mentioned new Model Y. Omar, do you have any comments on FSD supervised? Just the math I did.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at, for example, the vehicles going up to, let's say, 3 million, an increase in demand driven by FSD combined with the vehicle purchase and subscription prices, it's pretty substantial. When you have, I'm about to pay Tesla $8,000, for example, for the FSD package on my Model 3. So just do the math of, the lifetime value for FSD supervised. We're not even talking about unsupervised. The lifetime value is about $8,000, whether they purchase or subscribe. So 8,000 times 6 million is a $48 billion opportunity. Even
I
if
know,
they
but
can capture 10% of that before they go unsupervised, it's material.
But you're not representative of an average Tesla owner. Like, you purchased FSD years ago. You paid 5,000, 10,000. Even if it was 50, did you pay 15,000 before?
No.
Yeah. What's the highest you paid? 12?
7,000.
Really?
Yeah.
When you got to Model S Plaid, it was 7,000. You got FSD on Model S Plaid, right? Or your Model S?
Model S long range, I transferred it from the Model 3, which I had bought it for $7,000. So $7,000, I got to use it on 2 cars.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
Tesla
but the
has
thing,
said,
like 95% of people are going to subscribe to it, right? Unless if Elon comes out tomorrow and says, we're going to increase the price from 99 to 199 once this hands-free goes wide, then I think you might see some increase in purchases. But
I mean, if people subscribe, then Tesla actually makes more money because they can raise the price over time. They can recognize 100% of the revenue as opposed to 60% of the revenue. It's actually better for their bottom line, right? So whether they buy it or subscribe to it, the average value over the lifetime of the car is around $8,000.
okay.
Like the net present value of all future subscription revenue is equal to the purchase price.
Yeah. Yoda?
Yeah, Omar, I don't know if on your app the buy option is now the secondary tab. It seems like Tesla would prefer people to subscribe in the long run because likely the revenue will exceed whether it's 7,000, 8,000, or 10,000 in the long run for the lifetime of the vehicle. So maybe they're trying to drive people to be a subscriber.
Yeah, they make more money when people subscribe.
Yoda, as a long-term shareholder, what are you looking forward to? What milestone do you think will lead to an increase in the stock price in the valuation of the company?
Well, I think I'm most excited about two things. So one is the progress from supervised to unsupervised, um, and the second is the 1010 event. And specifically for the 1010 event, what I'm most curious about is whether during the demo, alongside the purpose-built robotaxi, which may not have a steering wheel, whether alongside they will also have Model 3s and Ys giving people rides. Whether it's supervised by a human driver or not, I think that's less important. But with Park on Park, I think now they can deliver end-to-end rides in that controlled environment.
Yoda, I remember you expected robotaxis to go online, Tesla to start the robotaxi service on 8.8. 8.8 got pushed to 10.10. And I think you walked back your driverless robotaxi service start since our latest discussions as 12.4, 12.5 variations rolled out. What do you think is going to, what do you hope for 10.10? So we're going to get a hardware design without controls. I don't know if there's going to be a service start. I don't think so. But what do you think is the most optimistic thing that can come out of 10.10?
I think coming out of 1010, I would like to hear from Tesla that they have approval uh, with a very limited fee or even just a route or two in which they've got regulatory approval to conduct just, A to B service. Because even if it's just a route from, let's say, a popular place to and from the airport or what have you, um, that will allow them to pilot the service with real customers. And so to me, in addition to the hardware show off, the app, the demo, I like to see some announcements around the limited number of routes that's received approval.
Okay. That's a good milestone to look forward to. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please let me know in the comments below the video what you think will happen on 10.10, what you hope will happen on 10.10. What are your takes on the macro data that came out today? What are your takes on the debate that happened last night and everything we discussed? Any sort of feedback you have for me or any of our speakers? I read every single comment below the videos and I respond to most of them. And it also drives engagement for the video, views for the video, views for the channel. It pushes out to new viewers. It's very, very important that people leave comments below the video on YouTube. Uzi.
I'm wondering, as a long-term investor, how much we should, I guess, weigh the FSD take rate. I'd assume, reoccurring subscription revenues would be a priority for FSD. Spending so much money on capex for solving autonomous driving, but we don't really have the data for the take rate, and we have the robotaxi unveil. So I don't think that like FSD take rate applies to robotaxi. So I'm wondering how much should we care about it in the future?
How much? What's it? How much do we care about what exactly?
The FSD take rate.
It's very important. What are you talking about? What kind of question is that?
I provided the reasons why you might not be as valuable as you think, but I believe it is. So I'm just curious, how much should we weigh it in?
Yeah, I mean, one limiting factor on FSD development obviously is a training compute. Like it may not be today, or sometimes Elon says, this is not the limiting factor, but these limiting factors change over time. So training compute is obviously very important in developing any sort of AI model and also for FSD, especially for Tesla, because they have billions and billions of miles of data. They don't have the training compute to process all of that. That's why they build in Giga Texas factory. And building training compute requires that you buy GPUs from NVIDIA, maybe from others. Also build out your own Dojo training cluster. And that requires billions of dollars, if not tens of billions of dollars in the future. How are you going to pay for that? You have to make money selling cars. You have to make money selling FSD. And it's very important, even in the near term, FSD take rates. Not to mention all the validation discussion that we had earlier. So, people buying FSD and using FSD is very important. Yoda, and then Omar maybe has other comments.
Yeah, the take rate is obviously important, but a big function of that is the price. And a big function of price is just how good it is. So right now, as a long-term investor, so I believe all those things are solvable. As a long-term investor, if I had to boil it down uh, to the most critical thing, uh, what I want to know is uh, will it achieve unsupervised? And the moment that it does, there could be very creative pricing models, that allows Tesla to optimize. They have the data to make all those pricing strategies work. So right now, the most critical thing is the progress to unsupervised.
Yoda, would it make you happy if on 1010 Elon said in the Vegas tunnel we're going to start using FSD unsupervised?
Well, having taken rides in the tunnel, it's yes and no. Yes, in that it's route number one. No, in that unfortunately that route is it's too controlled, and so it really doesn't tell the full story. So I'm a bit iffy on that.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. Omar, any comments around FSD take rate being material or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously material because it's a reflection of how good and useful the software is. If people aren't buying it, then it's probably not ready to be a robo taxi either. And again, this is a vehicle unveil. They're going to show off their first vehicle without any steering wheels or pedals. This vehicle is not going to enter production for at least 12 to 18 months, at least. Okay. And we've had vehicles that have been much longer than that. So, in terms of asking for approval for unsupervised FSD, I mean, this thing isn't even going to be in production yet, let alone ready for unsupervised FSD. So, when they're ready for unsupervised FSD, it's not going to be a secret. Maybe people are forgetting that they send us the updates and they're very good, but they're not ready to be unsupervised yet, not even close. I mean, they can't even reverse yet, right? So, it's not like something you announce, behold, unsupervised. We've had it all this time. No, they're showing us what they can do, and they're making great progress towards unsupervised, but they're not there yet. And it's dead obvious that they're not there yet. So they're showing a vehicle that they're going to start production of in 12 to 18 months. In 12 to 18 months, they very well may be ready to deploy an unsupervised service using this thing. And maybe they'll detail plans to do that. That would be very exciting. I agree. That's what everybody ultimately wants to know. When are you going to launch a real unsupervised service? And clearly that's what they're working towards here. But primarily, this is going to be, I think, about the vehicle itself and new product introductions, and not about the progress of the FSD software. The FSD software is now good enough that it can give a demo of the Cybercab within the studio lot, and it's going to be a perfect, smooth, zero intervention drive every time. So it's way more than good enough to do a demo already. But in terms of actually launching a service, it'll
Uzi.
Yeah, Omar cut out at the end for me. But yeah, the
Yeah.
reason why I brought up the FSD take rate is I think that's what Wall Street is going to weigh in the heaviest. So when you when I got that reaction from you, Yaman, I was laughing a little bit. But I do want to say I think the reason why Wall Street might not have complete conviction on the FSD take rate, well, first it's not released, and I think second when Robotaxi is revealed, that might it might be an alternative revenue stream to the FSC take rate that sort of makes you weigh in the importance of the FSC take rate to be lower if robotaxi adoption is high enough.
Yoda.
Omar, do you think Ashok will be on stage with Elon during the 1010 presentations?
He may, but I would guess no. Okay, so again, the event is in Los Angeles. Why is it in Los Angeles? Because Franz and his team are in Los Angeles. Okay, this is a vehicle unveil. They're showing off the design. It is FSD related. Elon may make some comments about that, but this is primarily, hey, look at the new car that we're unveiling. I think the name Robotaxi unveil has confused a lot of people where they're like, oh, okay, well, they're going to launch a Robotaxi service and the market may be disappointed based on all these kind of weird expectations people have that this is just a new vehicle unveil and that the vehicle isn't going to be available most likely. But it's incredibly significant in that they're showing Franz and the design team having a vision for what that lowest cost per mile driverless car looks like.
Where is Ashok?
He is located in Silicon Valley at Tesla's engineering headquarters in Palo Alto with the rest of the AI team.
Okay. So Palo Alto is AI team. LA is a design team. Texas is manufacturing.
Yeah, global headquarters and also their biggest factory in the US, their battery factory, etc. Head of the 4680 team. More and more stuff's moving to Texas, but they have operations all across the planet.
Yeah. All right. We're going to go. We have a new speaker. We're going to go to that. But let me just give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Paymore buys, sells, trades, and recycles electronics because Paymore believes the best technology doesn't have to come at the cost of our planet or your wallet. Join the Paymore revolution. Visit one of their 100 stores near you or visit paymore.com. This link is at the top of your screens. Tesla Live is, go ahead, Omar.
Oh, no, you finish.
Okay. Tesla Live is proudly sponsored by Joa, your go-to source for premium Tesla accessories. Joa offers everything you need to enhance your Tesla ownership experience. And because you're part of the Tesla Live community, Joa is hooking you up. Use the code TSLA Live at checkout for a special discount. Thank you, Joa, for supporting our Tesla community. Omar, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, since we didn't mention it in this space yet, they did open the sign up for 1010 events for Tesla investors. One share gets you one lottery ticket. You can go apply. They put a tweet out, and hopefully I'll see some of you guys at 1010.
Great. Roborides, you may unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question for the group. The Cortex computer, do you guys think it will be used for training only, or it'll be used like in general for robo-taxis in the future, like to teleoperate the fleet or like the other AI functions to run the fleet itself?
Yeah. Right now it's being used for training, but it is possible that it could also be used for inference in the future. One possibility is imagine a future where you have a smaller model, let's say running on hardware 3, that works pretty well. But when it gets confused, it can actually reach out to a more powerful model on the server, just like sort of Waymo reaches out to remote operators. I mean, they can use the cluster for whatever they want in the future. Right now, it's dedicated entirely to training the FSD models.
Roborides, this is your first time speaking, right?
Second, I had asked questions before.
Okay, cool. I see that you're a new account. Would you like to tell us about yourself a little bit?
Oh, sure, yeah. I started my account because I started a YouTube channel doing like FSD rides. I'm currently like in a new Model Y for 3 months, my first Tesla, and I've been testing out the last version I have is 12.5.1.3, and yeah, pretty much just do a bunch of rides and put them up online for people to watch and comment on. Just trying to gauge I am an investor. I have over that 4,000 shares. So I'm hoping to retire off of Tesla, honestly. So betting on Elon big time. Yeah, that's basically it.
When did you first invest in the company?
In 2019. So my average price is around 213. And I've just been
That's
dollar cost
awesome.
averaging. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, welcome to the speaker board,
Thank you.
and good luck with your channel as well.
Appreciate it.
Omar, you're gonna put up a video soon, right? If you want to record FSD Rise, this is how you do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I finally got the last missing piece that I need to do that. So maybe we can get everyone posting videos in a standardized way.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Alexander?
It's September now, Omar. Where is the Cybertruck in the oil fields?
Well, we haven't gotten FSD yet, but I do believe Ashok when he says that it's going to come in September. He has been on track with his prediction of Vision Park Assist for Cybertruck and Auto Park for Cybertruck. Both shipped when he said so. We're seeing tons of Cybertrucks outside Chuck Cook's house, and we've got 19 days left in September. I feel pretty good that we're going to get Cybertruck before the month is over, and then I'm going to drive it across the country, including stopping in Texas.
All right, great. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Otherwise, we have one more item to talk about. I don't know if anyone has watched this, but Lucid just had a tech and manufacturing day. Did you guys see this? Did anyone on the board watch it?
I read some tweets about it.
Oh, yeah? What did you read?
I might have scrolled past. Lucid isn't that interesting, to be honest. I mean, they've got some good technology, but it was interesting that they unveiled their sort of Model Y competitor, which they said they're going to sell for 50,000. It's like your loss on the Lucid Air is more than 50,000. Okay, how are you going to sell a car for 50,000? But I did like that they mentioned that it was going to have an NACS port, and unlike some other companies like Hyundai and Rivian, they actually managed to put the charge port in the correct place. So kudos to the Lucid team for figuring out how to do that. That at least puts them ahead of the rest of the industry.
Wow, that's amazing. What's so difficult about putting the charging port in the right place?
I have no idea. Probably just a lack of awareness that that would be better for customers.
Yeah. I think they also have to change, make some major changes to the electrical architecture and the design of the car to change the place of the charge port, is my understanding. And some companies
Yeah.
are, I guess, aren't willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on where things are, right? So if the power feed or the battery is in a certain part of the car, then it may be kind of difficult. Luckily, the new V4 superchargers have much larger cables. So over time, as they build out new stations, this will be less and less of a problem. But it would be good if the industry just standardized on one side of the car.
Okay. Well, I was hoping maybe somebody watched it, that we could get some highlights. But I'm gonna watch it tonight, and we can talk about it tomorrow, maybe. Because something like, especially Lucid, they go into the tech side of things a little bit more than, let's say, Rivian. And also, Rivian had I think their CFO just gave a speech, or maybe had an investor day or something. I'm going to watch it as well, so we can talk about those two presentations tomorrow. If somebody wants to contribute, I recommend watching both of those presentations, and we can share some takeaways tomorrow. Anything else? Anything else? VW is moving forward with more layoffs, I think, or maybe they've taken steps to start shutting down some factories in Germany, and maybe more across Europe. Yoda.
This is a call for the creatives. on this space. Could someone make like a Tesla ad, like a TV ad type piece, but with Peter Rawlinson's voiceover style over it? I think that would be hilarious.
Was he?
I don't know who that is.
That's the come on, you know it. I almost believed you. But the emojis gave it away that you were being sarcastic.
I know,
And
I'm
Peter-
serious. I'll search him up.
Are you serious? Peter Rawlinson? You don't know who Peter Rawlinson is? Give me a come on. Come on, Uzi. What's going on with you today? Are you sick? You're asking if FSD take rate is important. You don't know who Peter Rawlinson is?
Okay, well, Peter Rawlinson is with the D-class company. I searched him up, and he's backed by Saudi money, so he's not on my radar.
He's a billionaire, isn't he?
Yeah, billionaires are dimes a dozen nowadays. Who cares?
Is he a billionaire, Omar?
Yeah, Lucid shot up in market cap, and his performance-based stock awards were set up so that it didn't have to stay there for a period of time. Just crossing up past that threshold, he got $350 million. So he is the only guy in the world who made money off Lucid stock.
That's pretty amazing. That's really funny. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions, Yoda?
You may have talked about this earlier, but are you still expecting 50 basis points or 25 basis points for the September cut?
Well, I didn't say I was expecting 50, I don't think. But what I said was the probability of 50 basis point cut, I think it's higher than people think. And I think that that's what they should do. But after today's inflation data, the markets believe now, I think there's a 95% or 90% probability of 25 basis point cut and only 5-10% probability of 50 basis point cut. But earlier in the space, we went into the details of what came out this morning from the inflation data. And I explained why I think the inflation report was actually more supportive of 50 basis point cut, not 25 basis point cut, as most people seem to say, think. And I can explain to you in a second why that is. But Bull 2035.
Yeah, I just had a question for Omar on the Tesla supercharger network. I don't know if now's the right time, but basically, I read something about in 2025, there's going to be more brands on the supercharger network. Do you have any clarity as to what that is or where we can find out more information?
Yeah, so Tesla's opening up the NACS port. Everyone's going to start putting the Tesla charge port on their EVs. They're going to open up the superchargers to other brands, but they're doing it in a very controlled way. Not every station is going to be opened up to every brand. Only certain stations will be. So right now, I think Rivian and Ford can use it with an adapter. Other brands are going to come online with adapters and with native charging ports in their vehicles. And ultimately, you're just going to have superchargers open to any EV. Now, it is worth mentioning you're going to pay about 50% more to charge in another EV. So, for example, to charge a Cybertruck 0 to 100 at peak rates is about $60. In a Rivian, it's about $93. So in a Tesla, you get way more stations. I think it's like 6,000 are open to other EVs. And then there's an additional 12,000 that are Tesla only. So the V2s are all Tesla only. And when you're doing cross-country road trips, a lot of those pieces, you're really going to want them, the Tesla only ones. It makes the journey a lot more difficult to not have them. So Tesla gives you not only more stations, but lower prices. For other EVs, we call it a free sample of the supercharger network. They get to have a little taste, see how good it is, and then you can get a Tesla and get the full experience.
Robert,
Omar,
Yeah,
what's the revenue arrangement on the charging side between Tesla and the other EVs?
They have been allowed to integrate the Tesla charge port free of cost, and their EVs pay for the charging on a per kilowatt hour basis.
Wait, so they don't share in the capex at all?
No, they just pay 50% higher prices. And
Okay.
Tesla even makes the adapters for them and sells them.
Wow, that's amazing. So they got the supercharging
They're made
network
in
for
Buffalo.
free.
Yeah.
They got the supercharging network for free, basically.
Yeah. They just have to pay higher prices, but they got access to those superchargers for free. And Tesla gets the fact that NACS is a standard, which sort of helps them, as opposed to if CCS became more dominant. And most of all, like, it just sucks that people are still thinking EV road trips are a problem in this day and age. We had to really do something to fight against that. So I think they really made a good choice. And predictions of doom that superchargers are going to be flooded with Rivians and Fords and Teslas aren't going to be able to charge anymore, it hasn't happened. They've done a really good job, I think, at managing this rollout and making sure Tesla customers aren't affected. Although I did see a Rivian come to a supercharger in Solana Beach for the first time this last weekend.
Yeah, AI Driver also tweeted out the other day that he hasn't seen any non-Tesla EV added to the supercharger before, which is what we predicted here.
Well, very few non-Tesla EVs are sold. Tesla sells about 50% of US EV volume.
I think there's more than 1 million of non-Tesla EVs on US roads now.
Yeah, there are. Oftentimes, they're not really bought to drive long distance. If you're doing long distance EV driving, you choose a Tesla. Maybe someone's buying this because you know they want a Rivian to have drive around town, whatever. So that could be part of it. I think a lot of these EVs just aren't that good, so they don't get used that much versus Teslas, which actually get driven more miles than the average car. So all of that, I mean, you're going to see other EVs become a growing part of the supercharger network. There'll be a day when you come to the supercharger network and you see as many non-Teslas as many Teslas, and that'll mean electrification is a success. But obviously, Legacy Auto and other brands have been much slower to produce their cars in volume.
Yeah. Yeah, and if somebody bought a non-Tesla EV, they clearly bought it because they don't have to have supercharging network. And one reason why they buy non-Tesla EVs is because they don't like Elon. And if you don't like Elon, then you're not going to supercharging network to charge your EV either. Robo rides, and then we're going to switch just a couple more cents on macro, and then we're going to call it a Robo.
Do you think it'll negatively impact the fact that the non-Tesla EVs are charging if they're like less efficient, take longer to charge, they have like less efficient batteries and things like that? Will we as owners see that difference?
Omar?
It should be fine. Most modern EVs are pretty good. They can accept 250 kilowatts, no problem. Any EV that was unreasonably slow, like a first generation Leaf, would be not allowed to charge there. But most modern EVs should be fine. And one other thing, Shirley Meng and the Limiting Factor did a deep dive into the 4680 cell and posted a video about it.
Okay, great. Yoda, any other comments, questions on macro?
Is Taylor Swift macro or micro?
It is amazing that she comes up sometimes on Fed's beige book. I mean, anyway, what do you think the Fed will do?
25.
What do you think is the probability of a recession starting in the next 12 months?
Recession, I would say it's really low. Yeah, maybe below below 20%. I don't see that. There's some issues with foreclosures and the job market, but I don't think it's systematic across all industries.
Omar, do you agree with that? Less than 20% probability of recession starting in the next 12 months?
I mean, we may already be in a recession, but it does look like it's going to be a pretty soft landing. I don't think most people or really anybody is expecting a severe recession. The consensus really seems to be that any way you shake it, whether growth is a little bit slower here or there, unemployment goes a few points here or there, it's overall going to be a soft landing with a huge cushion in monetary policy that we can apply to stabilize the landing.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Any other questions, comments? It was nice having you all on the speaker board. We have a couple of new speakers. Robo Rides, welcome to the speaker board. And Bull 2035, I'm glad you're able to stay on the speaker board. I know you have some, I read your replies, and I know you have some different views than most of the speaker boards. So I would like you to join us as much as possible so we can dig into those things. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. And I will chat with you tomorrow. Don't forget to watch the 3 things. So homework for tonight for everybody. 3 things. 1, limiting factor video with Shirley Mang. 2, Lucid's tech and manufacturing presentation. And 3, Rivian's Investor Day presentations. Okay, so those 3 is what we're going to discuss tomorrow. Take care, and I'll chat with you next time.